Man, I am absurdly good looking. It's really almost not fair. But let me put that to the side for a second so I can answer an interesting question. Because somebody asked me today, is there a particular reason that you're so angry? Or are you just generally an unlikable asshole? And to clarify, the answer is yes, on both counts. But to understand what I mean by this, we really have to dive inside my head for a second. So I'm going to tell you about just some of the things that wound me up today so you can see what it is that's going on in my head, alright? And I'm even going to explain to you why it is that these two things in particular combined to tick me off, even though they wouldn't seem related to you. First off, it's tax season, and second off, the crappy employees at a local Burger King. So let's start off with the tax season thing. See, there's two kinds of people that you will encounter around tax season, around the first 4 to 5 months of the year. The first type of people are the type that are rushing to get their tax return done as soon as possible, like the earliest possible moment that they have their W-2s in their hands. And they're like going out and buying green dot cards at Walmart if they don't already have a bank account so that they could get that tax return that much faster. And invariably, when you encounter these types of people, they'll always tell you the reason that as soon as they get that money, all the problems in their life will be fixed. And invariably, when you encounter those people 2 weeks later, they're always broke again. Then there's the second type of people. People like me, who either don't get any money back from their tax returns or have to pay money when they do their taxes every year. And these people tend to put off doing their taxes until the last possible second. As a matter of fact, we're the reason that there is a deadline for doing your taxes. Because if it weren't for us, everybody would be rushing to get their taxes in as soon as possible anyway, and they wouldn't even need a deadline. But here's the thing. My reason for not ever getting a tax return is directly linked to the fact that I served in the military. And we're going to come back to that in a second once I talk about the Burger King thing. But I just want you to keep that in your head because it's going to be relevant for why these two things teamed up to piss me off in orders of magnitude more than either one of them would have individually. So I went into a Burger King today. And this is the second time I've been in the same Burger King in like the past 4 or 5 days. Now keep in mind, at least in the past 3 years, I think I've probably been in this Burger King like one other time, excluding these two experiences. But both of these two recent trips that I've had to this Burger King have ended the exact same way. I've stood at the counter with nobody else in line for a solid 10 minutes without anybody even acknowledging the fact that I was there, with one exception, and I'll get to that in a second. But, so there is always at least one manager present. The first time it was some old white lady, this time it was some younger white girl. And then there's always this young, kind of heavy-set black girl that obviously is supposed to be working the cash register, but who is always instead kind of just wandering around the back talking to the people who are supposed to be making the food. Now, in this second encounter, by the way, because neither time did the manager bother to speak up and say anything, which, in my opinion, it's clearly the manager's fault. They're not running a very good operation here. But this second time, the one dude who was, cooking the fries or whatever, he looked up at me twice and made eye contact with me, and then finally turned around and said to the girl, like, hey, who's supposed to be on the front? And she just kind of ignored him and went about her business. And this second time, I finally kind of just blurted out, like, don't even worry about it, fat ass, and I walked out. Alright, the first time I just walked out without saying anything. And some people might go ahead and say that that's a little bit rude, but you know what? The whole experience was ridiculous. I can excuse it one time. Twice, it's obviously a problem with this individual and with this restaurant as a whole. And, more importantly, the fact is it's tax season, and that combines with this issue to create a pretty disturbing train of thought in my head. And here's how it goes. See, I have a job where, in order to keep my job, I have to do my job correctly and, kind of work every single day. Otherwise, I won't have a job anymore. And yeah, I make a little bit more than somebody who works at Burger King. I'll admit that. But not a ridiculous amount more. I mean, if I did, then I wouldn't I wouldn't have other jobs. I would just need the one job if I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing it. And yet, at the end of the year, after busting my ass to make sure that I don't lose my job, I don't get a tax return. And I get treated like crap by random people working behind the counter at Burger King for no reason. It's not like I knew this girl. If she was some girl that, I had, dated in the past and was an asshole to, then okay, I get it. But I did not know this girl at all whatsoever. I don't know anybody working at this store. And believe me, if I did, I'd be putting their names out there just to be a dick. But this girl gets to go to work, spend 4, 6, 8 hours, whatever her shift is every day, just wandering around, completely ignoring her assigned duties, and just talking to her friends while they attempt to work. And not only does she get a paycheck, but she gets a tax return at the beginning of every year. And here's why that's a problem. Because had I not decided to go into the military, and granted, I understand, I did something wrong to, create this situation for myself. I'm not ignoring that, alright? But had I not decided to go into the military, and had I instead decided to just sit on my ass and do nothing my entire life, then here, come my late 20s, when I'm 28 years old, I wouldn't have to have a job where I actually had to do something to keep that job. I could just stand behind a cash register at Burger King, and in return, on top of my paycheck, I could get a nice fat check for $2,000 or so at the beginning of every year. And some of you might say, erroneously, because you don't know any better, yeah, but what about the respect and prestige that you get for having served in the military? And to that, I answer you this. What respect and prestige? This is not the 1940s. It's not the 1950s. And granted, while there are some older people who do, treat veterans nicely and have some respect for veterans, there are not very many people under the age of 30, and certainly almost nobody under the age of 25, who gives a crap, because none of that is real to them. No, I go back to the fact that I would have been much better served just sitting on my ass for that 4 or 5 years. Because during that time, I could have been working on increasing my Instagram followers and my YouTube subscribers. And that is something that gets respect from young people nowadays. God knows why, but that's what's important. Not, your ability to actually do anything productive in the world, and not anything you may have done that was, honorable or noble. They don't give a crap about that. They give a crap about what it is you may be able to do for them. And the fact of the matter is that having served your country one time in the past doesn't do anything for them. But maybe, if you have 100,000 followers on Instagram, you can give them a shout out. And that's something worth pretending to respect you for. So in closing, to the girl, who probably, if she were to ever see this video, probably knows who she is, who is supposed to be working behind the cash register at the Burger King on the US 1 exit of I-95 outside of Ormond Beach. Let me give you a couple of pieces of advice. First off, if you ever hope to have any job other than Burger King, you need to learn to actually do your job. Otherwise, you're not going to keep it for very long. And second off, I would highly advise, for your own health and the happiness of your life, that you cut back just a little bit on consuming the product in the store that you work at. Thank you very much. Have a great night. Peace.